So in the recent state of the game, there was a lot of stuff that people could talk about, and a lot of things that people have chosen to focus on, but there is one small section in particular that I would like to bring your attention to. Bungie, towards the end of the post, stated, "The final shape and its raid will provide a climactic conclusion to the Light and Darkness saga, before we look ahead to what comes next in Destiny 2. Now, this to me raises a question. A pondering, if you will. We know that Destiny 2 will continue with a new saga after Final Shape, that will presumably begin with the next expansion after the Final Shape, but if the seasonal structure is going to continue, which it seems to be, what the hell are the 4 seasons between Final Shape and the next saga going to be about? My genuine guess is that they will be lower scale in terms of world-ending threats, but focus on tying up loose ends in the lore. But in order to have some fun, I'm going to attempt to develop some concepts for these seasons going forward, and you can let me know what you think. So why don't we get straight into the first concept season, shall we? And what will this inspiration for this season be, you ask? Well, my friends, many years ago there was an activity that Destiny players traveled into in order to face off against the enemies of Saul in a way that we never encountered before. This activity, debuting in the House of Wolves expansion in Destiny 1, was a survival game mode where you would travel from room to room, surviving against waves of enemies while completing objectives around in arenas, in order to face a final boss and earn the glorious treasure chest that the Awoken and mainly Variks promised us. Yes, it was our favorite Vanguard member restricted darkness kill zone, the Prison of Elders. This area, and more importantly, the original activity, I believe could be revamped and returned into Destiny 2 to fill in the gaping menagerie-shaped hole that has persisted within the game since Beyond Light. So, in this season concept, I intend to craft a less dramatic narrative that can help tie up some loose ends, reintroduce some old content with some new flair, and introduce a new ritual activity to provide gear for the new Pathfinder system, seeing that Bungie brought Gambit out back and told it to look at the flowers. But Cyber, you might be crying, why are you focusing on old content instead of brand new content? And for that, I have 3 things to say. Number 1, my next season concept will probably have fundamentally new content ideas. Number 2, this is a way that Bungie can stop themselves from committing the cardinal sin of over-delivery. And number 3, I just like Prison of Elders. It was the first ever activity that a young, slightly stupider version of Cyber used an LFG for. Oh, good times. But anyway, let's get straight into this. Well, actually, real quick, I have had the draft for a concept season since before the launch of Witch Queen that I actually called Season of the Deep, and I kid you not, it revolved around the return of Titan and Sloane, and together you would fight off against the darkness still there and encounter a hive dungeon. I never made the video, and now I never can because people will think I am lying. But I swear to God that I literally had the same name and everything, and only I had a whole point of like adding a new smaller area to the Titan map that was a giant stasis iceberg to explore. But anyways, that's why I'm making this video now, before Season of Elders eventually becomes reality down the line. Now, grab your house banners and prepare to enter into an arena full of prisoners forced to fight you with no chance of survival because Variks may be more of a psychopath than we realize. Let's get into Season of the Elders. Let's start with the story. Basically, I'm gonna go off the assumption that both Variks and the Drifter survive Final Shape. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm working with, and they are going to be the main vendors and characters of this season. Along with Petrovenge, who I'm also assuming may not even be in Final Shape, which hopefully means she survives. The weekly story missions will revolve around Variks returning to the Reef in good faith in order to create and build a safer, more secure prison for the enemies of the solar system to be placed in should they surrender. He needs to communicate with Petra closely in order to win back the trust of the Awoken, but have no fear, old Drifter has a few ideas on how to make the prison, and more importantly, how to fill it. The weekly missions would revolve around 2 main activities: fugitive hunts and the Prison of Elders itself. Fugitive hunts are essentially a blend between Wrathborn hunts and pirate hideouts. It involves our Guardian essentially becoming a bounty hunter for the Drifter and Variks, following the trails of wanted fugitives of the Vanguard, the Awoken, and the Neomuni, who are causing trouble after their leadership has been beaten. You would load into their last known location and follow clue trails and face off against enemy ambushes and traps, as you navigate to a final area where you face off against the final boss themselves. the wanted fugitive. Each boss would have different unique abilities and crimes that they have committed that can be viewed in on the mission log. Their fight would include large enemy density, as these small remnant factions have banded together in an effort to survive after the fall of the Witness. Once you defeat the boss, instead of killing them, they will fall to their knees, or whatever the equivalent is for each race, and several awoken ships will appear and raise them into the air and arrest them just as they arrested Skolas in House of Wolves. I personally think it was a really cool visual, and I just think it would be neat to use it again. Some of these bosses could be homages to previous enemies we faced, such as Kelgrath again, or if Bungie are feeling really saucy, a Scorn resurrected version of our dearly loved and deceased Taniks, ripped fresh from the frozen surface of Europa by the Fanatic as he attempts to find some forces after losing control of the Scorn. And also, more on him later. Now, an idea that I find pretty cool is that in order to view the conversations between characters each week, there will be a portal in the helm that would transport you to a recreation of the Vestian outpost from Destiny 1. Only a bit more lively. I understand why Bungie may not want to add it as a full new social space, but if they want to, go for it. But either way, I think it would be a nice homage to revisit it again in some form. Over the weeks of the season, this area would improve as Varix and the Drifter get more support, with a bar forming, more guards appearing, an area to view wanted poster bounty boards, and maybe even a Hall of Infamy area where you can see the posters of the criminals you've arrested yourself, hung on the wall to show off to all your fellow Guardians. Another idea that I thought of and was like, hey, that's pretty good, was a way to directly link fugitive hunts with Prison of Elders. But before we get into that, let's talk about the new and improved Prison of Elders activity itself. Prison of Elders would return to Destiny 2 with the same structure as Destiny 1. It is a wave-based arena survival game mode with a central hub break area that leads to various doors that bring you to the designated arena for certain enemy races. There were 4 of these arenas in the original variation of Prison of Elders, but I'm going to expand that, meaning the center room will be a lot bigger, and maybe that could accommodate, like, ammo refill zones inside it, like, just to kind of, so it's not just a big open area. In this new version, the center area will be bigger and house 7 doors to choose from. Each door would lead you to an arena themed around one of the following factions: the Fallen, the Hive, the Cabal, the Vex, the Scorn, the Taken, and possibly surprisingly, Nightmares. Like I said, previously each of these arenas would have a different layout and be themed around the race. For example, the Nightmare Arena could have components and walls stripped out of a pyramid ship as decoration. Or the Taken Arena would feature floating platforms above a Taken Void that requires jumping to navigate successfully. Each arena would force you to play slightly differently due to different effects that could occur. I don't know how complicated it would be to implement, but I would love if an artificial blizzard from Europa could manifest in the Fallen Arena. Areas of the Cabal map could catch on fire due to large rocket thrusters in the ground and wall. And the Hive could have cursed areas of the floor that just slow you down. Hey, Editing Cyber here. I almost forgot to say, for the Vex I would have, like, walls that would just teleport in and out of reality depending on the wave, so that means the arena itself is constantly shifting, or maybe every couple seconds instead of every wave. The Scorn and the Nightmares are a bit tricky to implement, but for Nightmares I would place a darkness in the arena similar to the Whetstone exotic mission to make it difficult to see, and for the Scorn I would incorporate lots of moving platforms and walls made out of rusting fallen machinery, reminiscent of the Fanatic strike back in Forsaken. Back to the gameplay of the activity. Every level or round you successfully complete 3 waves of, the difficulty would increase, and the game would automatically randomly choose a door to open to enter. At the very beginning, there would be just basic enemies. At the next level, there would be basic enemies and an added objective, such as dismantle mines, yes. Then the next level would introduce enhanced enemies, which would essentially be stasis-wielding captains and brigs for the Fallen, Lightbearer Hive for the Hive, Wyverns and more of those, like, Vex, Bulks, head trap things, and maybe Cyclopses, and any improvements Final Shape may give them for the Vex. The Shadow Legion for the Cabal, Stasis-wielding Taken for the Taken, of course. And the Scorn and the Nightmares would both probably get Tormentors, as they both sort of fall under the category of enemies made directly from the powers of the darkness. Then, after completing every wave, you would face a boss with unique mechanics that you would have to learn in order to defeat them, and return to the safe area in order to drop down into the treasury, and secure the exclusive loot that the moat would have to offer. Now, real quick to jump back to the bosses, I would like to explain how I would connect both the Prison of Elders and Fugitive Hunts. Each week in Fugitive Hunts, you would be sent out to track down a boss from a certain enemy race on a different location. These bosses are then arrested, as you know, but what I think would be fun would be to bring these arrested bosses into the Prison of Elders as the weekly boss. Each week the bosses will change in a rotation of 7, and over the course of the first 7 weeks of the season, you would capture one boss from each enemy race, therefore completing the set and bringing about a boss for each arena. I just think this would be a cool way to show the actual repercussions of your missions by showing your captured bounties both being taken off the bounty board and placed on a captured wall in the Vestian outpost, and then getting to face off the fugitive one more time as a final boss in the Prison of Elders. I just think it's cool and a nice little homage to the Skolas boss fight in House of Wolves. Prison of Elders would also have multiple difficulties, probably ranging from normal, legendary, and master, with every higher difficulty being more difficult and starting off with an enhanced versions of every enemy, but rewarding better loot and a higher chance at the RNG exotic that I would tie to this activity. The Dregs Promise. It would be an exotic sidearm brought back from D1 in order to complete the set of fallen exotics that we once had. It would function basically the same as it did in Destiny 1, being a burst fire arc sidearm, but if I had the opportunity, I would add an extra exotic ability that would give you the option to hold down your reload button after getting a certain amount of kills. This alternate fire mode would allow you to fire one single grenade from beneath the barrel of the pistol before swapping back to the normal firing mode. This grenade would be a smaller, compact version of the fallen trip mine that explodes in a bubble that would disorient enemies and slow their movement. The reason it would require multiple kills would be to ensure that it didn't become a weapon of mass destruction and mass aggravation in Crucible. And then, if Bungie had enough time and resources, and potentially if they made the season a bit longer than usual to give enough time to implement it, I would add an additional difficulty called the Extraction. In this exclusive mode, you would choose to complete as many waves and as rounds as you wish. The more you do, the better loot will be at the end, with higher stats on gear and increased chances for RNG drops. But whenever you decide you have completed enough, you pull a lever in the center and then a random boss will be chosen for you to face, and should you defeat it, you get to claim the enhanced spoils of your victory. But if you wipe at any point during the activity, you get sent straight back to orbit. I think this will be an intense game mode that doesn't actually have a lot of risk, so new players wouldn't be turned away. But it still offers a challenge level that the player can control as they push their limits in an effort to get higher chances at RNG drops found exclusively within Prison of Elders, higher stat rolled gear, and more loot in general. Speaking of, let's take a look at the general seasonal loot. Within the Prison of Elders activity, I would reward weapons themed after House Judgment, being legendary fallen weapons with green metal and white fur incorporated into their design. This weapon set would be found within the activity, but fit with the Season Pass armor themed after House of Judgment with green cloth and white fur similar to Varric's, which after unlocking them could also be found within the activity through the vendor upgrade system. The Season Pass ornaments could then convert these into long duster coat style bounty hunter armor with kind of Rick Deckard vibes from Blade Runner. The ornaments could explore the sort of cyberpunk bounty hunter lawbringer vibe that the story aims to bring to life with your Guardian's missions all across the locations within Destiny 2. Higher difficulties of Prison of Elders would drop better rewards, as I have stated already, with Dregs Promise being probably the main incentive for grinding, as every higher difficulty increases the chance of this weapon dropping through RNG. I would have this weapon drop very rarely with a very low chance to keep up the chase, but I would also add in the Destiny 1 Taken armor into the loot pool that could be obtained via bounties given by Varric's, which have a chance to drop them. I would probably put in the Taken Legendary Sword that Varric sold in D1 into this same system as well, just in order to complete the set. Of course, I would also introduce an exotic ship and Sparrow themed around Varric's or the Prison of Elders itself for players to claim through challenges and from ranking up with Varric's. Specifically, I would have the ship either be Varric's personal ship, if that hasn't been done yet, or even the escape cryopod that prisoners are put in, but with maybe like a big rocket attached to the back of it. It'd be kind of funny, but like, it'd probably never work. But then again, we did get a rock from Dares of Eternity, so anything is possible. In terms of a narrative season finale, I would have dialogue between the Drifter and Petra regularly hint towards them never finding a certain villain that fled the Tangled Shore after the Witness arrived. Midway through the season, I would introduce the Scorn version of Tanyx as the weekly boss, which would then confirm to Petra and the Drifter that the Fanatic is back in town, and now it's time for his immortal ass to be brought back to the prison. So the final week and mission of the season would involve you being sent after the Fanatic to bring him to justice on an isolated area of the Tangled Shore that returned for the season. If possible, I would have it be the exact area from the Fanatic strike with the door locked behind you to prevent you from exploring the Tangled Shore, if Bungie were unable to return the location. Upon defeating this final mission, the Fanatic would be arrested, and in an ideal world, you would get 2 new activities unlocked to play with. Firstly, you would get a new remastered and reworked version of the Fanatic Strike to play with that could have its launch icon in the helm, although I am aware that it is asking for a lot. And then also, a new version of the Prison of Elders to play called the Fanatic's Revenge. Yes, it's another homage to Skolas' Revenge, but hey, if we're in the seasons after Final Shape, why not celebrate some of the expansions that came before? This would be a medium-tier difficulty mode, which would function as a normal Prison of Elders run, only now the final 2 rounds are guaranteed to be the Scorn Taniks boss fight, before allowing you to fight the Fanatic once again. And maybe even the Drifter can find out a way to finally stop him from resurrecting by Varric showing him how to purify his ether, which would then finally allow us to kill him once and for all. Unless his story arc made him seek forgiveness or something, but I'd say he'd probably prefer to fight to the bitter final death. And that, my fellow Guardians, is the main core game loop of this concept season, but I have 2 more areas that I would like to bring additions to, that I know would probably be impossible, but hey, it's a concept season, we can dream. First off, Gambit would finally see the return of its Tangled Shore map. Nothing else really, but I just think it would fit the season thematically, and I just really want Gambit to get all of its maps back. Then on to Crucible. I would add 3 new game modes with a select number of new Crucible maps. These game modes would be called Cage Match, Riot, and Mayhem Riot, and they would all take place in the arenas from Prison of Elders that are converted into Crucible maps. I don't know how difficult it would be to bring over each arena from the Prison of Elders and make them as smaller individual Crucible maps, but I think the small arena would be perfect for these game modes, and converting all 7 would ensure a playlist of maps that would prevent the modes from getting stale upon launch, and if they even wanted to, you could start with 4 and drip feed the rest in every second week of the season. Cage Match would involve teams from 1v1 to 3v3, and would take place in these small arenas, creating intense small-scale combat with very quick respawn timers. It would essentially be Clash, but a showdown bomb would appear in the center at the end of the round if both teams have a surviving player, or if like the score is close enough. And perhaps even a competitive multi-round elimination version of Cage Match could be introduced, and added to the competitive playlist if the game mode was a hit with players. I just think the small arenas could evoke something similar to the Gulag and Warzone, bringing an intense battle of wits and skill into short matches. Riot would involve the same small arenas, but would include full-size teams of 6v6, which would cause chaos similar in my head to a prison riot, hence the name. And of course, Mayhem Riot would be the same chaos but dialed to 11 with enhanced ability recharges and regular refills of heavy ammo on the small maps. It would be a party game mode, but there are no super small maps in Destiny yet, and I think it just could be something different and fun. And I'm also now just realizing that if it was successful, Cage Match could get a Cage Match Rumble mode with a 6-player all-against deathmatch within the small arenas. And yeah, that's pretty much it. By the end of it all, we will have learned exactly what ridicule and torment Varric suffered through in order to cause the breakout in Forsaken, whilst also understanding his remorse for how his actions led to the death of Cade 6. But thanks to the help of our Guardian and the Drifter, he will now be welcomed back into the Reef and the Last City, and take his rightful place as the Warden, and the watchful eyes of judgment upon those who seek to destroy the worlds we call home. I basically really want Varric to have a focus again, since we haven't seen him since Beyond Light, and I think this would be perfect. But yeah, let me know what you think of this concept season down in the comments below. I'm aware it is basically more of a kind of podcast-ish video, but if you enjoy it or have any other aspect of Destiny that you would like me to make a draft up of for a concept, just let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. If you did enjoy this video, then why don't you check out that time I followed my friend around as he tried to navigate the blizzard for his very first time in Deepstone Crypt. Or maybe you'd like to see me play deep dives under a custom rule set to make me fight like a diver. And hey, I've also got a machinima ongoing on the channel called the Fireteam of Fools New Light, which is a spin-off of my main Destiny 2 improv roleplay series, the Fireteam of Fools. So if you want to check any of that out, hop into the description or my channel below, or you'll find it there. But either way, I'm gonna go and finally finish ranking up my season pass now. So I hope you all have an amazing day, and I will see you in the next one, yes? Goodbye, and roll out.